Okay, today we go beyond the gate and into the vineyard with Missouri Wines, or the Missouri Wine and Grape Board. We'll learn what the difference is with Annette Alden, the Director of Marketing. We're going to talk about wines, we're going to talk about grapes and all that in between. But before we go there, I'm going to talk about you. Yeah. Tell me about yourself, girl.
Well, thanks for having me. As you said, I'm the Marketing Director for the Missouri Wine and Grape Board, but I didn't start my career there. I grew up on a farm in Northeast Missouri. I had 2 sisters, so 3 girls in my family. And I really didn't think I could even have a career in agriculture till I got to high school. And I was like, oh, there's more to do in ag than just farming and raising cattle.
Cows and plows. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I went to college at University of Missouri, majored in ag business. Still didn't really know what I wanted to do, but marketing agriculture really excited me, and telling that story and taking a deeper dive. And so right out of college, I went to go work in the seed industry, to work for Monsanto, or their channel brand. And really got to do a lot of fun things there. See the trade shows, work with the dealers, the sales force, but still really in that marketing capacity. And I knew that's where I wanted to stay. But if I was ever going to be a marketing professional, I needed to be kind of more well-rounded. And I wanted to see other aspects. I went to the agency side, and I worked in account service. And then I said, okay, I kind of understand this, working with brands, doing video campaigns, but I hadn't really worked on the media side. So then I went and worked for a media agency and building media plans with traditional and digital. And one day, my husband said, hey, I think I found a job that you might be interested in. And I said, oh, okay, this is new. What is it? And he's like, it's the marketing director for the Missouri Wine and Grape Board. And I said, oh, well, they probably want like a wine professional, like a somm, someone who's actually studied wine. I just, enjoy it personally.
Don't we all?
And yeah. And I went to work that day and kind of put it in the back of my mind. And I was in a meeting, and we actually got booted out. A client showed up, and I said, hey, you're going to have to go to the tech room. And I said, okay, the media room. And Missouri Wines was one of our clients at the agency, and they had been there doing a tasting. And but I was too busy with client work, didn't get to go. And I moved one of the chairs around, and there was a Missouri Wine stopper. And I was like,
meant to be.
That's a sign, right? So I went home, and I said, Jake, where's this job posting? Tell me more about it. And it was like branding, social media, events, video, all of these things. And I was like, check. I've done all of those throughout my career, and I love wine. This is something I could really be passionate about. Okay, I'm all in. Let's see where this goes. And, almost 10 years later, here I am.
Well, we had similar passions young in life. Like, I grew up on a beef farm raising cattle, but I didn't want to do that full time every day. And, I went to college as an agriculture communications major, not marketing. And I remember being asked, what's your major? And I was like, agriculture communications. And they're like, oh, so you talk to cows? And I think I was like, I don't know how to answer that question, because I had never really thought about how our agricultural products are sold.
Yeah.
And so now we get to be storytellers, and you have a better job, man. I sell money now, but you get to sell wine.
I do.
And that story of your professional life is probably tried and true to many marketers when they're passionate about something and something just lands on their foot. So, marketing director, you talked about some of those hats, events. How many hats do you wear? Which one's your favorite?
Oh, wow. There's so many hats. Probably my favorite is when I get to play tour guide, and we get to bring in journalists or influencers, or even just people who really, maybe they already have a perception.
Can I be one of those influencers?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
That maybe they don't even have a perception that Missouri has a wine industry, and we get to enlighten them or even change their perspective. And I think that's when I feel most fulfilled, is when I get to take them out to a winery and showcase all of the wonderful things that our industry has to offer.
Well, Missouri Wine and Grape Board is under the umbrella of Missouri Wines. The brand is Missouri Wines, but there's lots of little vignettes underneath that. So what is the Missouri Wine and Grape Board?
Great question. So we're actually housed in the Department of Agriculture. We're kind of a government entity, which is a little secretive. I mean, people don't know that we're actually in government. And so it's actually a governor-appointed, Senate-confirmed board. A lot of our board members are actually winery owners. We have some that are in the restaurant industry, the beverage industry. So we bring in those professionals to give us that insight to their industry. We have a 5-person staff in the Department of Agriculture. And our job is to promote the Missouri wine industry. we have two sides to that. So we're funded through a tax on wine sold in Missouri, not just Missouri wine, actually all wine sold in the state benefits and gives back to our industry. So we focus on marketing and educating to consumers, to everyday people. And then we also have kind of a more technical side at the university. And they have test vineyards where they're actually out there looking at new grape varietals to see if they can hack it in Missouri's harsh climate. And then they make wine for them. They do support our industry, so like workforce development. They bring in, new winemakers, and they do trainings, and they do almost like consulting work, if you will. So we're very fortunate and very unique across the United States that we have those two entities that kind of give back and help see our industry succeed.
Well, you talked about that tax.
Yeah.
And so that's a tax that the consumer pays.
Yep.
And that is not just Missouri born and bred is what I would call in the cattle world, but grown and bottled here in the state, but it's also any bottle that's sold.
Yes.
And so let's talk a little bit more how that is utilized from issue standpoints, like how you're utilizing those, whether it be to at the state capitol and the legislative side to the marketing side.
Yeah, so we don't necessarily lobby. So there's actually like a 42-cent tax, and we get 12 of that. So the other, 28 cents is my math.
I don't do math. We work in creative side. We don't
percentage of it goes to the Department of Agriculture to support other, Missouri grown.
And that is something that I just learned in the last couple of years. And it was that the impact Missouri, the sale of Missouri wine, so the gas station down the road, the liquor store down the road, how they're impacting Missouri agriculture. Because let's face it, pennies are tight all the time, and how that sale is impacting agriculture across the state.
Yeah. So it's just a few cents per bottle. But it's so nice that, in the 80s, when some of the kind of, I don't call them forefathers, but kind of the folks that saw the vision, and they said, we want to bring this industry back to the state, that they were like, we need to invest in it. We need to have someone that's going to fight the good fight and educate and promote us and drive that traffic. So it's wonderful that they had the foresight to say, let's take some of this tax and let's build our industry with it.
Because I know the answer, I'm going to ask the question, is Missouri, are all other states ran like this, or is Missouri unique?
Missouri is really unique, and a lot of other states would love to have what we have. They may have membership organizations where they have dues-paying members, and they have to generate a lot of revenue. So they have wine festivals, or they have events where they're trying to generate that profit to keep their promotions for their industry going. We've hosted other states, like a delegation from Tennessee came in and said, hey, we want to see our wine industry grow to what some of our other beverage industries have in our state. And what can we do? How can we model after you? And we're an open book. We invite them in and say, hey, here's how we're structured. Here's how we work with our legislature. Here's how we work with our universities and our commodity groups as well. You can model after us. And so we have a lot of friends in the industry that we hope to, we want to see all wine industries succeed. We're not, necessarily competing with our other neighboring states. We're actually working quite closely with our friends across the river in Illinois. We're hosting our second annual Missouri Wine and Grape Summit in Augusta. Southern Illinois hosted last year, and we're bringing those over in February to host it in Missouri in Augusta.
Well, you definitely, I don't think wine, maybe others, when I think Iowa.
Yeah.
But they're partnering with other alcoholic beverages, other industries. Yeah. So like distilleries, breweries, the craft brew industry is crazy now. How is Missouri working with those other industries?
Yeah, great question. So we actually just did a study looking at wine trails. We worked with us, and then we looked at wine trails in New York, and they did a study a couple years ago, and then they came back and asked those same folks, what do you want to see? And what the wine trail participant or the consumers are saying is that it's not like 20 years ago when you had wine, beer, or spirits. They drink for the occasion. And when they visit a wine trail or when they're out on a tourism outing, they want something for everyone. Maybe their husband wants something different. And so, we have done some events with the the Distillers Guild and the Craft Brewer. So they don't quite have the organization like what we do. But I was just in Chicago with Visit Missouri. We did the Show Me Verse, which we constructed a dome and had 360-degree footage that we projected on the ceiling. We invited journalists, and there was a distillery there. And so I don't necessarily look at them as competitors, because I think we all want to see the beverage industry succeed in the state. And I think there's a lot of other ways that we can work together.
Well, we've talked a little bit about the setup and how it's all structured, but let's go back 100 plus years.
Yeah.
When was I still think, like, I know it, but even most people in Missouri are not going to think wine.
Yeah.
But we've got a crazy history.
We do. We have a very rich, I like to say that the Missouri wine industry has deep roots.
Mm-hmm. Literally.
Literally dating back to, the early 1800s. So looking back to the town of Herman, right now it is kind of known for its beverage industry, but back in the 1800s, it was flourishing. It was a wine town. And they actually incentivized folks to move to Herman if they planted vineyards or if they opened a winery. So prior to Prohibition in the 1800s, there was, upwards of 60 wineries in that small town. And we actually had one of the largest wineries in the United States, Stonehill Winery. So they opened in 1847. And I mean, they were booming. They were winning gold medals at the World's Fair. But just like all the other...
Prior to the West expansion of Napa Valley.
Napa wasn't even thought of at that time. And they were doing some great things there. And then just like all across the rest of the United States, Prohibition happened. And it was kind of a dark time. It kind of put parts of Missouri into a recession because they were really known for their wine tourism. And I guess that's the only thing that I don't think there's too many positives from Prohibition. But if I were to say there's one, is that it kind of preserved the town of Herman. And if you've been there, there's really historic buildings and beautiful cellars.
That are still there?
That are still there. You can tour them. Some of the wineries are still in operation today. You've got Stonehill from 1847. You've got Adam Pukta from 1855. You've got Hermanoff with their historic pre-Prohibition cellars. So you can almost do like a pre-Prohibition cellar tour just in one town. But they were doing great things. And Prohibition kind of took the wind out of their sails, and they ripped down vines. They poured, the barrels of wine out, and they were kind of, almost in a depression, if you will. But it preserved those buildings, and you can still see some of that history today. But I'd like to imagine that, what if Prohibition hadn't happened? We'd be the Napa of the Midwest. We would be known for wine here in Missouri.
Well, as a dreamer, I dream of what that would look like, because I did not know. I mean, I think wine, of course, when you go to Herman. I've got friends that live there, and we visit all the time, as much as we can. And I've toured I've not toured. I have had a glass at all of those wineries, but now I'm going to have to dive. Okay, good.
Yeah.
But now I know the history, so I'm going to ask for the tour next time I'm there.
Yes.
But pouring out barrels of wine and literally pulling up by the roots.
Yeah.
The plants. Why? I mean, why couldn't they just wait until it was over?
Yeah, they some of them probably wanted to, and there's actually some vines that did survive. So Stonehill has kind of their old vine, Block of Norton, that was kind of way back and kind of hidden. And I don't think anyone knew about it. They kind of forgot about it.
I bet they knew.
Yeah, maybe someone knew.
Strategically covered
it. They were like, we'll just save that for our own, usage.
I forgot about it.
But they found it, and they were actually able to kind of revive it. And they actually still make wine from it today. They call it their old vine Norton. It was probably about Civil War era. So like 1865 is when they predicted it was planted. There's another cool vineyard in St. James, Missouri. So I got invited, I think it was 2021, and they said, hey, would you like to come down and do a story on this century-old vineyard? And I said, oh, yeah, that'd be great. Let's talk about it. And I said, wait a minute. So century-old, so it was planted in 1921. That's right in the middle of Prohibition. Tell me more about who was this renegade planting grapes during Prohibition.
To make grape juice.
Yeah, exactly.
Duh.
They were. And so they knew that those Italians that settled in that area, that they actually knew how to grow and cultivate grapes. And Welch said, oh, we need to lean into this. And they actually had a grape juice production facility close by where they could truck or cart the grapes in via train. And they convinced them to grow contract grapes for Welch's. And so they were growing Concord. And so still today, if you travel I-44 during the fall, you'll see some of those roadside stands still selling Concord grapes. But it was really cool. So at the time it was being grown for grape juice, and now it's being produced for wine. But really cool to see if there's, a 100-year-old vineyard that survived Prohibition, because it was, very innovative, and Welch's took advantage of their skill sets.
Any other cool Prohibition stories?
Oh, there's so many. Our friends at Adam Pukta, they were around. And what's cool about them is that they are the 7th generation winery is what they're on now. So they're the oldest continually family-owned winery in the country. The same family that owned and operated it prior to Prohibition still operates it today. So like I said, they're on their 7th generation. So they were around prior to Prohibition as they were reopening the winery and cleaning things out and trying to, reinvigorate and plant those grapes, they were digging through paperwork and they actually found some of the actual signage that they said from Prohibition. So if you go to their tasting room, you'll see that framed in the tasting room today.
Okay, I'm going to have to look because I've been into the tasting room several times.
Yep, right there on the wall. That's the actual propaganda from Prohibition about, trying to bring the industry back.
That's cool. Well, okay, history. We are not in Prohibition. We enjoy our fun drinks.
Yes.
Let's talk about the future of before we talk future, I want to talk technology.
Yeah.
So like that innovation side, how has production changed? Because like agriculture, I always like to coin the phrase of agriculture farmers are the fastest adopters of technology.
Yeah.
Because they have to be.
Absolutely.
I'm sure what do we call wine farmer? Grape farmers? What do we call them?
Wine growers.
Wine growers. See, that sounds pretty.
Yeah.
How do wine growers adopt technology?
Well, so there's so many different things from mechanical pruning. So when the vines are dormant, you have to prune off that new growth so that fresh growth comes in when that's where the grapes are grown. So you've got mechanical pruning, you've got grape harvesters, because we all know that you need labor to be able to pick those grapes. And sometimes it's really hard to find people that are willing to come out for 2-3 weeks a year in the fall and hand harvest those grapes. It's still just done today, but those crews are hard to find. So there's pickers. They kind of look like kind of a combine in it.
I've seen them.
Yeah.
They don't look normal. I mean, not a typical combine that we would think.
It straddles those
tall,
each individual
skinny
vine and kind of shakes those grapes right off and kind of puts them into a hopper.
Because you think of a lot of things that we quote unquote harvest, they're not as delicate as a grape.
Yeah.
Well, and these aren't table grapes.
They're not. No.
But they're still harvested the same way.
Yep. So, and then they, adopting technology, there's so many things. Now, wine's usually still made in pretty traditional methods.
We're not stomping them anymore.
We're not stomping them anymore. No, we've got presses and crusher to stimmers. So there's, innovation there. One of the things that we look at is even about how we seal our bottles, how we close it. And so that's something that's really changed. I think Australia kind of led the trend saying, hey, we know corks are traditional, but there's room for failure. And that's not acceptable. We want everyone to experience a fabulous product that was just as good when they open it as when we put it in the bottle.
Because storage is so important with that cork.
Storage is very important. When you store a wine, especially one that has cork, you want to have that on its side so that that wine stays in contact with the cork and keeps it moist so that that air doesn't seep in, because air can be detrimental to wine. It can be oxidized and really kind of break that wine down. So when you see a wine that has a screw cap closure, it doesn't mean that it's a low quality or cheap wine. It means that that winemaker really wanted to invest and ensure that that quality that you experience is amazing.
That is definitely a myth you busted for me today, because I had that. Now, don't get me wrong. I will buy that screw top when I thought it was because of quality, but it's efficiency, but also it's improves the quality of it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can still get a top shelf wine with screw top.
Yep. Now everyone loves that rich kind of sound and that ambiance that it creates when you pop a cork. But don't discount those screw cap wines. They're excellent wines out there.
Okay, so we've covered technology, but the movement into wine in 2025 and 2026, like how is it evolving? What's the next step? How do we go beyond?
Yeah, so wine is such a traditional thing. We talk about how long wine has been around, and so some of the things that we're looking at is where do we go from here? How do we evolve? What do our consumers want? And so some of the trends that we're seeing is packaging, for example. They want that convenience, but maybe they also want smaller portion sizes, something that they can just enjoy for an evening. Maybe they want more bubbles. So we're seeing a trend not only with sparkling wines, but kind of lightly effervescent wines, kind of like a frizzante style. So St. James is incorporating that into their lineup because they're listening to what the consumers want and they're delivering products. So we are trying to, while we stay true to our traditions and have that lineup, offering products that we know our consumers want. Our wineries are looking at canned wines. We're seeing some of those being offered in wine lineups. So there's lots of evolution. And I think while we'll stay true to our roots and have very traditional wines, I think there's an option or an opportunity to adapt and look at what the consumer is demanding and make sure we follow suit so we can continue growing.
Yeah, well, I think that consumers have a lot of options today.
Oh, absolutely.
And it doesn't matter if I'm standing in front of a shelf after shelf of wine or beer or seltzers or whatever is out there. There are so many options. It's still overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. The market is way more saturated now than it was 10, 15 years ago. And your consumer has shifted too. You know, there used to be you either liked beer or wine or spirits, and you're kind of stuck in your lane. And now consumers, we're seeing that they're drinking for the occasion, that if they're at a barbecue or a tailgate or maybe on the river or on a boat, they want something different, or maybe it's a fancy dinner. They're drinking more for the occasion, and they're kind of mixing things up and not being so siloed. Well,
this kind of segue into the whole educational component.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that your goal and your job and the hat that you want to wear is making a wine approachable.
Yes.
And I've never thought of wine as unapproachable until I now think of it, because I stand there and I don't know what kind to get. I like that label.
Yep.
I like that name.
Packaging sells.
It does.
It does. So you're absolutely right. I want to break down the barriers. Sometimes if you walk into a fancy wine shop and you see all these appellations or these terms or these words you can't even pronounce, and you're like, oh.
I haven't even tried to pronounce them.
That's okay. That's not what we're about. You know, we don't want you'd feel shameful if you mispronounce something. My goal is to make you know that you can have wine in any setting for any occasion, and that you don't need a PhD in wine to make an informed decision. So my team is putting out content to kind of break some of those barriers down and, you know, have wine your way. If you want to pair wine with Doritos, we've got a wine for you.
Okay, what wine is that?
So Norton is actually fabulous. It kind of enhances.
What about spicy? Spicy nacho is my favorite Dorito flavor.
Okay. So spicy nacho, you know, one thing I like to say is that sweet cuts heat. So maybe a kind of off-dry or semi-sweet Vignola with some of that tropical fruitness might tame some of that heat.
Who knew we were going to go down this road?
I know. Okay. We did the hard work so you don't have to.
I love Doritos. Okay, I'm totally interrupting you, but any other crazy pairing?
Oh, let's see. Crazy pairings. We've done, so like buffalo wings. We did that with a Vignola. We've done Girl Scout cookies and wine.
Okay.
Donuts and wine, junk food and wine, Chinese food. And really, we're very scientific about it. We pull a group together of professionals. And it is kind of challenging. We've partnered with some other brands like Emos Pizza, Shakespeare's, Sugar Fire Barbecue to do pairings with their products. We work with, you know, local products like Hemi Brothers Creamery as well. So some icons out there that we work with. And we want to go firsthand and try these products and have that experience. And we bring in individuals and you go one by one and say, okay, and it's a voting system of, okay, what did you like with this? And we've done it with chocolates and something that was kind of unique. An interesting one that I like to showcase is kind of like an adult PB&J. So it kind of brings those like youthful memories back with doing a Concord wine with a peanut butter chocolate. We worked with the Candy Factory, and they had what they called a peanut butter indulgence. And it was a peanut butter blended with white chocolate dipped in a dark chocolate. And we did that pairing at the state fair in our Wine 101 class. And I like to bring something new there every year. We did an espresso cheddar from Hemi Brothers. We actually did 2 different pairings. We did it with Shamerson and Norton. And it's such a cool thing to see how wine impacts food and vice versa. So we always say like sip, bite, sip, and let those flavors kind of mend together. But it's very subjective. People like different things. And so that's why we say, just because this is the pairing we like, don't be afraid to be adventurous and find something new. We did poll an audience and we said, okay, here's this wine. What's your most outlandish pairing? And someone came and said pistachios with Norton, which Norton is a state grape. So it was kind of cool to see. That's one I hadn't thought about.
And I think people are scared of a Norton, and because it's not necessarily one of the most popular, but as our I should ask, how did it become our state grape?
Yeah, so it's very historic. So it's one of the grapes that we were growing prior to Prohibition. It's actually some say it's a Native American grape, where they kind of cultivated it to be more hardy. So it actually started in Virginia with Dr. Daniel Norton, and they found that it really grew well in Missouri soils. And so they said, hey, we're really kind of known. We need to have a flagship grape and be known for this. And so, they elected that to be our Missouri state grape.
I enjoy a good Norton.
Yeah, it's kind of polarizing.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would say that if someone doesn't like it, have you tried all the Nortons out there? Because a winemaker can have such a unique approach. They may use oak, or they may use a softer oak, or maybe it's an unoaked. They might use a Norton to make a rosé, if you will. So there's all different kinds of styles of wine. Our grapes can be really versatile. So that's like the tool that we have in our toolbox. But how can you take something different? How can you have a new approach? Maybe they blend it. So, that's my challenge for folks. If they say, Missouri wine is too sweet. That's another misconception.
And I don't like sweet wine.
Yeah. We have a lot of great dry wines out there. And so just because maybe you didn't like it at one place, try it somewhere else, because that winemaker may have a different approach to it.
Well, I have a funny first wine experience, and it's not drinking, but it goes back to kind of like the culture of Southwest Missouri and like never being exposed to wines and not knowing how to pronounce them. My very first job in high school was I worked at a little restaurant in Aurora, Missouri called Bootleggers, and they made their own beer. It was a nice kind of bar and grill. And I was hired right at 18, and I was waiting tables. And this table asked, we're ordering glasses of wine. And of course, like, I have this little like sketch pad that I'm supposed to like write. I didn't know what a Merlot was, or I don't even remember what they ordered. But I remember going back to the bartender going, I don't even know what they said. I can't even pronounce any of these wines. And that was my first experience with it. And now I am so many years old that I still am overwhelmed with wines, because there are so many varieties and hybrids and vineyards that are offering all these different flavors. And one of the things that I've really appreciated about Missouri Wines and you and Jim Anderson, your boss, and your connection with Missouri agriculture is I learned something new about wine every time you're serving it. And what does that mean? Well, the Missouri Wine and Grape Board is present at nearly every agricultural function across the state, because who doesn't like free small glasses of wine? But there I'm like, okay, Jem, what should I try today? Well, Jamie, try this Vignol, and it's here, and it's not this. And I'm like standing there I'm not afraid to ask you guys questions.
Yeah.
But so often people are afraid to ask that waitress what they would recommend, or that waitress doesn't know.
Yeah.
So how does a consumer like me, who has been didn't grow up with it, but has been experienced with it for many, many years, that still gets overwhelmed? How do we combat that? How do we not feel overwhelmed and buy that bottle and love it?
Absolutely. Well, don't be afraid to ask questions. Usually if someone is in the wine industry, they're excited to share with you. They have that knowledge for a reason, that they want to educate others and make wines approachable and tell you, oh, you're having this for dinner, or you're taking this to this event. Oh, I've got just the wine for you. Or this wine has a story to tell. And I think that can also be something that's unique too, is learning the backstory, and people feel more connected. They're like, oh, wow, okay, now I know why there's a cat on that bottle.
And that, for me, is such a visual learner. Then I'll remember what they told me, because then I can picture that bottle.
Yeah. Yep. I always challenge my staff. I said, okay, let's do your 30-second elevator speech. So as you're pouring the wine, you're telling the story about the winery or what's unique, and kind of painting that picture with words about, oh, if you go there, make sure you go there at sunset, because it's just a beautiful light that comes across those vines. Or try this food, and this combination is a really unique opportunity. But that's some of the content that my team is putting out, is to break down those barriers and say, okay, here's the information about glassware. Here's which wines you should chill and how long. Or maybe you forgot to chill it, and here's a fast way to cheat the system and get that wine chilled in time for whenever your company is coming over. Like I said, we got those wine pairings. We do little infographics online. But beyond just learning, we want to show people how to utilize wine, how to cook with it. So we have a whole video series that's developed, or that's focused on recipe development. And we actually do those in-house. And we partner with our commodity groups, like you said, our friends at Missouri Pork, Missouri Beef, Midwest Dairy. And we work with them to source some of those local proteins or products. And then we utilize wine to say, like, hey, this is something that you can do in your home. And we show them, hey, here's all the ingredients, here's the steps, and this is something you should try. We have so many recipes out there. So if you haven't, I'll shamelessly plug our website, MissouriWine.org. Go out there, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and see some of those videos. If you're wanting to kind of get into wine and dip your toe in or see how you can utilize it, check us out.
Well, speaking of social media, recently there was a graphic that I'd seen about the anatomy of a wine bottle and how, so when you are standing there and you're trying to decide which to buy, what are we looking at? What is that bottle telling us?
Well, we've got some bottles
beside
here.
the fun label.
Yeah. Okay. So as we break down this label, we're going to look for a couple main things. So one, you're going to see the producer. So you see the winery name is very prominent at the top there. So we've got like Stonehill here. And then there's some other terms that you may not be familiar with. So the next thing that you're going to see down here, well, there's a depiction. So it's a very traditional label, the one in the middle. And then we've got a year. Do you know what the year means, Jamie?
I do.
Okay.
I do. It means when the grapes are harvested, when they're picked.
You are exactly right. So those grapes may have spent time in a tank or in a barrel. So it's not necessarily when they're bottled, but yeah, exactly when the grapes were picked. So then going on down, we have the grape name. Now, there might be a fun name out there if it's a blend or a proprietary, mixture that the winery has. It's very old world style. New world style is to do more single varietal. So here we have a Chardonnay, which is actually a hybrid of a Chardonnay and a Sauvignon Blanc. That's why it kind of sounds familiar. Mm-hmm. So then moving on down, you see, I think it says estate bottled in Herman. So that's a term that you're probably like, now what does that mean? So estate bottled means that the winery actually owns those vineyards and has control of those grapes all the way from when they're picked, crushed, harvested, and bottled. So that's what it means to be estate bottled. On some of these other ones, you might see like this Norton we have here from Spencer Manor in St. James. It says Ozark Highlands. Now that's actually the appellation or the AVA. Fun fact, Missouri has the first AVA.
And what is an AVA?
So AVA is American Viticultural Area. So you've probably heard of them and you maybe didn't even know it. So you've heard of maybe Napa, Sonoma, the Finger Lakes.
Yeah.
So it was the United States government said, hey, we're great at growing grapes, just like Europe, and we want to be known for it. So let's outline and distinguish those territories, those regions that are good at what they're doing. And we actually have the first one in Augusta, Missouri. And so
the first one in the U.S.
First one in the United States.
Wow.
In 1980, they said, okay, you've got a rich history and heritage of growing grapes. And you can distinguish it with a border and unique soil type. And there's a lot of paperwork that goes into it. But we had the first, and we actually have 5 now. And so Ozark Highlands is another one there in Spencer Manor, but you don't have to have any of those things like the appellation on there. You could just say Missouri or American. Now on the back side, you'll see information like the alcohol level, maybe a story about the winery, the wine, and some of these have a sweetness scale. And that's really helpful because if someone's not there, at the grocery store aisle telling you about this wine, you're like, is this dry?
Or they're organized for you.
Yeah. So on the back side, there's actually a little indicator that tells you where it falls on that spectrum, which is really helpful when you're trying to make a purchase.
So chilling, you mentioned that earlier. Yeah. So like stereotypical white, cold, red, not.
Yep.
But what are those exact temperatures and how is the best way to get them there?
Okay. So we have a little saying, we say 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
So that's how long you're going to put it in the fridge. So you're going to take a sparkling for 3 hours in the refrigerator. And you are going to put that in a little bit longer because it's such a dense, thicker glass that it takes longer for it to kind of reach that ideal temperature, about 45 degrees. So our whites and our rosés, 2 hours. We want to get those to about 55.
Which is warmer than a refrigerator should be.
It is. Yeah,
so,
a little bit.
I mean, to do it right, pull it out early, or do you have to have a fancy wine fridge?
You don't.
Okay.
And temperature is really subjective. That's one of the cool things about wine is that you can experiment with it. And you talk about like reds and people are like, oh, well, you don't chill your reds. And ideally you don't. But when we're talking about drinking them at room temperature, it's actually cellar temperature. So you do want them just a little bit chilled. So we say about an hour. But that's a really cool thing to try. Maybe if you got 2 bottles of the same wine, like a red, chill one a little bit and see how that kind of gives it a fresh nuance or different flavors and heightens your experience.
Okay. So guilty.
Yeah.
I'm a red drinker, but they're just sitting on the cabinet. Like there's no temperature control. I drop an ice cube in my reds. How
judgment.
shameful is that?
That's okay. I encourage you to drink wine the way you like it. If you want to enjoy your wine,
everybody makes fun of me.
No,
but I bet if I put it in the fridge and planned ahead, then pulled it out for a little bit, then I could actually all those flavors. It's like, oh, does my tongue not taste that? I don't know what I should taste. I just know what I like.
And that's okay too. You don't have to be able to pick up on all those subtle notes, hints of cherry or raspberry. I get the tobacco notes or the chocolate. That's really a fun experience, but drink the wine you like. If you prefer wine out of a red Solo cup, I'm not here to judge. I might invite you.
I like a fancy glass. I just want to cube.
Yeah, I might invite you to try some other stemware, but I'm not going to look down on you for it. I want you to enjoy wine, however it's comfortable for you. But there's lots of cool, fun wine experiences that you can have at home with pairings, with the presentation. So we talk about how wine kind of opens up. If you ever hear someone say, "Oh, this wine's a little tight; it needs to breathe," or maybe they're gonna, aerate their wine.
I've heard all those things, but I don't know what I should be tasting to know if it's tight.
So you can cover a glass of wine, pour 2 glasses at the same time, cover one with a coaster, and continue to swirl and enjoy the other glass as you normally would. And then come back to that glass, 20, 30 minutes later and try them side by side. Tell me if there's a difference. You'll notice it a lot in the reds. Or try it, as it warms up in temperature, see how it kind of evolves.
I need to slow down and think through those. Okay, so you talked about experiences.
Yeah.
Make wine a fun experience. You guys do that all the time. My favorite, because I'm a Missouri State Fair junkie, is the Missouri State Fair wine tent.
Yeah, the wine tent.
How many years? For me, forever.
They had it on their shirt
Probably
this year.
A gem question, but...
Yeah, they had a shirt that said how many years. I'd have to go back and look at the pictures to see, but
to paint the picture, it's a tent in the middle of the fairgrounds under shade trees. You decorate it up so you don't feel like you're at the fair. There's fans blowing. You serve craft beers from all over the state. And wine, and you do your wine 101s. But you brought something new to the fair this year.
We did.
Are you going to do it again next year?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
It was such a hit. So, we work very closely with the Missouri State Fair, and we love the wine tent and the experience that it creates. There's only a limited number of products that they can sell there, and the wineries really didn't have an opportunity to engage with customers directly. And so we approached the Missouri State Fair team, and we said, hey, what if we did, other states do this thing called like a wine garden. What if we had like one day when we could bring the wineries all in one place, and people could just sample and purchase at their leisure? And we approached the fair, and I think you were probably in that meeting.
Yeah, I was like, yes, ma'am, you got my vote.
Yeah, we were like, we see your offer, we raise you one. What if we space those wineries around the fair and kind of did a wine trail and made it an experience? And so we said, okay, we're all in, let's go. And so this year we launched the Missouri State Fair Wine Trail. We had 10 wineries located throughout the Missouri State Fairgrounds. And it's a pretty big area. If you haven't been there, there's
acres and acres.
Yeah, you can spend days and still not see all of what the fair has to offer.
And I like to quote Director Chris Chen that the Missouri State Fair is the #1 reunion of agriculture, but is the best showcase of Missouri agriculture.
It is.
And the wine tent has showcased it, but this just took it to the next level.
Yeah, it's the wine tent, and wine itself at the fair has become part of people's traditions. And I hope this becomes one for people going forward. But it was such a unique experience. You got a passport and kind of checked off the stops as you went and sampled. And we heard so much feedback. I go around the fair for all 10 days wearing my wine logo. And I can't tell you how many people stopped me, even days or the next week, and said, hey, that thing you did was awesome. It really got me out of my comfort zone. And I went to buildings I'd never seen before. I'd never been in the home ec building. Or I didn't think Farm Bureau really had anything to offer me, so I never went in there. And they got to explore new parts of the fair. People made friends. They saw they had wristbands and they had their little tickets. And they said, oh, hey, where did you go? And which wine did you try?
Because they had
there?
to find them.
They did, yeah. They had to find them, and then we had a little map and signage. But they really took that opportunity to say, oh, hey, I saw you at the last one. Tell me, I'm going to try one. Which one should I try? And so they made friends. They connected. They said, oh, we're going to meet up later at the wine tent. You should come. I saw them at the concerts later. So it was really kind of a fun outing for folks. And for all the feedback, people said, we want to see it again. So we're looking forward to year 2 and
I am
making
too.
it better.
And I think I have a few other upcoming events to chat about. But year round, you all are promoting the events at these wineries.
Yes.
So anytime you're wondering, where can I go this weekend or a long weekend to celebrate something, there's events happening at these wineries year round, and you can be that source of entertainment.
Absolutely. So on our website, we have a calendar of events, and we promote when they're doing live music, or maybe they're doing a movie in the vineyard. They could be doing a really unique food pairing event, or they're doing a vertical tasting, which means they're trying the same wine but different vintages, like 10 different vintages of Norton side by side, which is really cool to see how the temperature and the weather had an impact on that year's harvest when you try them side by side, especially when you pair it with food. But there's so many fun events. I mean, there's trolley experiences out there in wine country. There's barrel tastings with the winemaker as you're touring their cellars. So we have all of that on our website. We also do a newsletter that people can sign up for. We don't spam you, just twice a month. And we'll put, there's fun things. We do giveaways in those newsletters. We talk about events, DIY. People loved, like, what should I do with all these corks that I'm saving?
Oh,
so we have
crafty
crafts, that we make with wine corks and, like I said, the recipes. So we give ideas. We want to inspire people to, venture out and explore Missouri wineries. But if you want to enjoy something in your home, here's some ways where you can enjoy that too.
2026 is a big year.
Yeah, it is.
For Missouri, before our country.
We're going to be in the global spotlight.
Yeah. So we need to mind our P's and Q's.
A little bit.
But America 250, what does that have to do with wine? How's it impacting your life?
Yeah. So in 2026 is the 250th birthday for the United States. So that's huge. We're so excited to kind of have that spotlight and show, not only like the country's rich heritage, but the rich heritage of our industry and kind of showcase, hey, we've been around for a while. You may not have known about us, but here we are. We're very proud of what we do and we've come a long way. So come out and experience, celebrate America's birthday at wineries. But there's some other things that we're celebrating next year.
I just got, my brother-in-law is from the UK.
Yeah.
And I just got home from there. Football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What they call football.
Yes. The World Cup is coming.
Yeah. So we're going to be, especially Kansas City and the United States in general is kind of going to be in the spotlight for the FIFA World Cup. Kansas City is going to be hosting a number of games next summer. And those travelers will also get what they call like base camps. So that's where the teams are kind of going to be housed in a base camp. And Missouri might have several of those. And those fans are going to follow their teams and stay close to where their teams are staying. There's going to be fan fests and stuff. But in the downtime, when they're not, watching games, they're going to be looking for things to do. And wineries can take full advantage of that. So can a lot of other industries, restaurants. And so we're telling them be thinking about what you should do, but be also thinking about their culture that, they may eat at different times or they have a different tipping culture or they're probably going to want to experience American cuisine. But the other thing that they're constantly asking about is Route 66.
Music to my ears.
Yeah.
Most of us in the Southwest Missouri corridor are well known to the Mother Road.
Yes.
That runs through. How is that going to be impacted?
Oh, they're asking about tours. They're setting up bus groups. So they're going to want to start kind of at the origin and then come right down through Missouri. So there's so many opportunities, I think, not only for international travelers, but even domestic travelers, because there's going to be kickoff events. There's going to be celebrations. They're talking about, wine fest on the bridges that cross Missouri and Illinois.
Wow.
So really cool things that I think people can take advantage of. And we're going to be right there in the mix promoting it and kind of celebrating along with everyone.
Well, I think every community across the state is, well, probably country, but we'll talk Missouri, is forming committees to have their own personal celebrations. But I hadn't even compared or thought about the World Cup and 250 and those extra guests that we can showcase Missouri. And for us as Missouri born and bred agriculturalists, highlight what we can bring to the table and what we can offer. Okay, so switching gears just a little bit. Yeah. What's your favorite glass, the best glass of wine you've ever had?
Oh, wow. Best glass of wine I ever had. Okay, well, I'm going to say two.
Okay, I'll let you.
So one of the reasons why I kind of got into wine was my dad. My dad had a love of wine. And it's kind of tried and true with so many people that you usually start with a white because it's more approachable, it's softer, easier. And so was a Vigneron that I had with my dad. And he's like, hey, I think you should try this wine. So he kind of started my love of wine and kind of piqued my interest. And that's why I kind of had a love of wine. And my husband was like, I think you should look at this. And they must have known something I didn't, because even at my bridal shower before this job, I got gifted so many wine-related things. And
it was meant to be.
Yeah, it was meant to be. And then I was kind of, looking at different things and was still drinking mostly white wine. And I was at a dinner, and one of those fancy dinners where they're ordering wine for the table. And someone ordered a bottle of red. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, it'll be fine.
Just drop an ice cube in it.
Yeah. And it was a big, bold, dry red. And it kind of shifted. I was like, whoa, okay. Food and wine is impactful. With this steak, I needed a bolder wine to kind of stand up to all the flavors that were there. And that was kind of when I kind of shifted and started drinking more reds. And experiences can be so impactful, and you're tied to scents and aromas and tastes.
It's the whole scene. It's the whole story tied together because it's not just a glass of wine. You're remembering the food you had with it, who you were with,
and you're
the
tasting
stories you shared,
part of the culture, or, what's grown there. So wine has so many great ties. I had a Chamberson that when I first started this job, I had never heard of Chamberson. I was like, what is that? Am I pronouncing it right? I think I might like it based on the description. And we were out with a film crew. And in the town of Augusta. And have you ever been to Augusta?
I have not yet.
Oh, you should. So it was kind of a sleepy little river town. So many B&Bs. And the host said, so I know you're scouting the night before and you're going to film at like sunrise over the vineyards, but what are you going to do to feed this crew? I said, I hadn't really thought about that. And I said, well, what if we host a dinner for them? You bring the wine, we'll supply the food. And so I was like, I think 6 weeks into this job. And I knew one of the winery owners. I said, I think we're going to have this. Let's get a couple bottles of Chamberson. And lo and behold, it paired wonderfully with the meal that our host had prepared for us. And that was, kind of opened my eyes. Oh, okay. I think I really am in the right job here with my love of wine.
So how has your taste buds changed?
Yeah.
From that first day? Those 6 weeks in, since you took this job to today. And is it ever too late to evolve that palate for a wine lover?
I think I heard or I read once that every 7 years, your kind of palate changes. So even if you didn't like something 7 years ago, go back and try it again.
I need to tell that to my 6-year-old.
Right? Mine too. But I'm kind of a seasonal wine drinker. When it's really hot outside, or I'm going to be on a porch or, at the state fair, I kind of lean into more of a white wine. But then not a normal October, not this year's temperatures.
It's still 80.
I know. But a normal October is when I'd probably shift into more of a red wine. And, you're drinking a glass of wine at night with the fireplace or outside by a campfire. So it's okay to, shift your preferences. I know mine have definitely evolved through this role. I've had much more exposure to other wines, lean into sparkling and rosés and it's a great job when you get to explore some of these things for work.
On the clock.
On the clock, yeah.
Okay, I have one last final question to wrap up our chat. But before that, have we missed anything? Is there anything we still need to include to share with listeners? Fun facts, tidbits, information? Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunities in Missouri wine country, and we want to encourage you to go out and explore as many wineries as you can. So we actually have an incentive program, a loyalty program. It's called Rewards Uncorked. And there's no cost to join. You can click on our website. There's a little prompt there. And you can earn points just for visiting wineries. You can use your mobile phone. You can check in using your location services, earn those points, and then you can redeem them for tasting vouchers. You can redeem them for T-shirts, hats.
At any vineyard or through
we'll ship them to you.
Okay.
Yep. So ship directly to your door. Really cool opportunities. We're just launching a brand new wine candle. So we took upcycled wine bottles. We repurposed them, cleaned them up, and then we worked with a local person in St. Louis, and she's converted them into candles. So we're promoting those. So you can.
Well, the holidays are right around the corner.
Yeah,
that's
be a great
fun gift. Well, everything about Beyond the Gate is going deeper.
Yeah.
And lifting that. I don't know, kind of behind the curtain type thing about Missouri agriculture, living rural life. But I also want to do that with my guests, and that's you, Annette. So let's go back to 18-year-old Annette. You've had this career wearing many different hats, but clearly have landed in the job you're meant to be. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Okay, looking back at my 18-year-old self, I would probably say, look at every experience as an opportunity that you can learn from, and that it may shape you in a way that you weren't expecting, but down the road, you're probably going to have benefited from it. You're going to learn something about yourself or how to overcome a challenge. So even if it's a positive or negative experience, don't look at it in that light. Look at it, 5 years from now. Will this still be as impactful 10 years from now? And kind of shape your view on that, if this won't matter in 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 years, Don't let it upset you. Just keep rolling with it. You're going to learn from it and be a better person from it.
Well, Annette, wise words to your 18-year-old self and to everyone to take into heart. Again, we've been listening to Annette Alden, formerly the Director of Marketing for the Missouri Wine and Grapes, learning everything about Missouri wines. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Gate. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. We've got new episodes dropping every other Wednesday. If you want even more local content, follow Around the Ozarks on Facebook and Instagram. Or you can go to aroundtheozarks.com and subscribe to our daily newsletter. Join me next time for more stories of grit, growth, and spirit of rural life.